Okay. Um, I don't know who I'm gonna. I can't share this with groups. So if you well, actually tomorrow I can share to groups. So if I do it tonight, I can always share the saved version for tomorrow. I attended a conference in earlier this month, a couple weeks ago, and basically, I usually, as a professional, I'm wearing scrubs because I don't have any pajamas. I have to do laundry. I'm not working now, but when I did work, I wore scrubs all the time. They're comfortable, so. But when I did work and I was, in professional setting as a therapist, occupational therapist, I would go on a seminar, and then I would come back and I would give to the staff, I would give them a summary of what happened at the conference, why I was gone from work. So I told people they're all very interested in what I found out when I went to this Rule of Law conference in Hartford, Connecticut. I had to tip this because the words are coming up. Okay. So hi, Beth and Evelyn, and who else? Joe. Beth, how are you doing? Oh my goodness. Yvette's mom passed away. Did you see that? I don't know if you saw that. Yvette Berry. Very sad this week. So anyway, just here we go. What I'm going to do is I'm going to tell about the conference. It was open to the public. I did register, and there was problems with registration. People who wanted to go and register weren't able to. After I was able to register, they weren't able to register. And then I never got a confirmation, but what happened was I did get a lot of emails then from the Bar Association, so I knew they got my information, but they didn't take my name in and send me a confirmation. So what I did was I called them up and I said, look, I'm going. Hi, Don. I'm going to this conference, and I'm going to be attending this session. I already signed up for it. I'm getting your emails, so I know that I'm registered. So they very kindly, replied back to me. They were very good about, the Bar Association was very good about getting back to me. They were very, very pleasant and friendly in the office. And then when I went up to register, they didn't even have a name tag for me, but they made one for me right there. So that was fine. And then I got the brochure, the Rule of Law conference. So what I'm going to do is, first I'm going to tell you about the outline. I'm going to just read a little bit from here. And then I'm going to tell you about the keynote speaker. The whole design of the conference was this. It wasn't that long. I mean, it was 8 o'clock to 12:30, so it was a half a day. So the first they had they didn't have any refreshments or anything like that. It wasn't like they had coffee and breakfast, continental breakfast, anything like that. But they did have a keynote speaker. Then they had breakout sessions, 3 of them. And the conference was on rule of law. And then the 3 subjects that they had for breakout sessions were politics and the rule of law, media and the rule of law, and the rule of law and for teachers and students. And then they came back into general session, had panel discussion or panel questions, and then they had a closing speaker. And that was the whole format of the event. I waited so long to get back because I thought they would have videotaped the sessions, and they didn't. Had I known that, well, there's no way I could split myself in 3. I would have liked to have seen what they said at the other sessions, but I attended the politics and the rule of law session. So on that note, let me read what they say about the rule of law conference here. Okay. The Rule of Law Conference will gather Connecticut attorneys, judges, lawmakers, and journalists, business leaders, and students to examine the rule of law and why it matters to the success of our community, and to ensure that we preserve its sanctity. What is the rule of law? It is the ideal that posts that while individuals write, interpret, and enforce the law, no one is above the law. You see, I found a lot of I'm not going to keep interrupting, but I found a lot of hypocrisy in the whole thing. The whole thing was a big propaganda, and I'll get into that. So let me continue with this. Okay. No one is above the law. Ha ha ha. It is part of the foundational fabric of our country. This is why I'm saying it's propaganda, because this is what shit that they're writing here. We know that that's not true, because there is no redress in the courts. Due to the process clause of the Fifth Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, the separation of powers, including the independent judiciary, the freedom of speech of the press, and the equality before the law, all exist to safeguard the rule of law. Oh, okay. Let's see. I'm surprised that they know that. The rule of law is under attack. Well, no, we know that, because it's color of law. That's what they're doing. When the judge makes a decision that is unpopular, even if well reasoned, it may be assailed as motivated by other factors. The media is criticizing as disturbing fake news and is biased at a time where our sources for news continue to change. According to the recent Pew Research study, 2/3 of all Americans get at least some of their news from social media. Yeah, we do. Social media does not apply the same journalistic standards to traditional media, and we have seen public opinion manipulated through social media. Oh, we've seen it manipulated through the mainstream media too, owned by the same 6 corporations that own the politicians that have them in their pockets. Preserving the rule of law is not simply an exercise in admiring static principles in well-worn tomes. Times, maybe. Well-worn tomes. I don't even know what that word is. Maybe it's a typo. In an increasingly connected and interdependent society, each of us is a participant in preserving the rule of law. We must continuously strive to uphold the very principles upon which it operates, a vibrant and robust media infrastructure that adheres to time-honored principles of truth and well-researched fact over conjecture and falsity, even as journalism enters new communicative spaces at an ever-increasing speed. I'm sorry, it's hard for me to read this. A measured executive branch that follows the will of the people and defends our country from threats, foreign and domestic, the legislature that reflects and represents the people it serves, and a judiciary that is free from bias, preserved from influence, and empowered by its charge to interpret and defend the Constitution, like in family court, or probate court. The balance of these powerful institutions are our rule of law. They don't say anything about color of law, of course. As envisioned by the architects of our founding and made truer by the modern champions of our success as a nation, specifically the interplay between the 4 states in preserving the rule of law has never been more relevant. Freedom of speech and freedom of the press allow us to criticize the actions of the government and to hold the government accountable without fear of reprisal. Without this freedom, the rule of law is undermined at best, at worst, undone. Do you know that under President Obama, I believe it was in 2011, that propaganda is legal? And so they could say whatever they want in the media because propaganda is legal. So in other words, they don't hold to the freedom of speech the level of responsibility being media. So they get media passes, but they don't have the responsibility that traditionally media used to hold for honest journalism. So they're allowed to embed themselves into political situations, and they can say whatever they want, whatever they're paid to say, whatever the higher ups and, in the newsroom. If you go to the newsroom here in New Haven, they don't take stories here. You have to call up to Hartford, the central people up there, for your news story. You can't go straight into the doors of the news station here and say, I got a local story. They have to have it filtered and censored and written through their Hartford office. It's crazy. I know. Because it's all corporately owned. So, all right. So without this freedom, the rule of law is undermined at best and at worst undone. Judicial independence is likewise necessary to protect it. Our judiciary must be free to make decisions independent of political influence, private interests, or popular public opinion. Oh my God, this is funny. Is somebody wanting to watch go live with me? Does somebody want to go live with me? I'm not sure if somebody wanted to go live. Okay. All right. A paraphrase of this, of his response to the very question, whatever. Okay. Oh, wait. How do we preserve the rule of law in the modern age? 180 years ago, in one of his earliest published speeches, Abraham Lincoln spoke before the young man's something or other in Springfield, Illinois. He was 28 years old, and he was growing alarmed about the increasing disregard for law which pervades the country. To paraphrase his response to that very question, rules today: let reverence for the laws be breathed by every American. Let it be taught in schools, in seminaries, and in colleges. Let it be written in the primers, spelling books, and in almanacs. Let it be preached from the pulpit, proclaimed from the legislative halls, and enforced in the courts of justice. And in short, let it be the political religion of the nation, and let the old and the young, the rich and the poor, the grave and the gay, and all sexes and tongues of all colors and conditions sacrifice unceasingly upon its altars. We must continue to advance in the rule of law with the renewed sense of urgency. We must be reminded of the importance of the rule of law and the role each of us plays in advancing its ideals. Well, ideally, it would be nice if they actually did practice the rule of law and not the color of law. The conference will bring multiple perspectives to discuss the review importance to continued relevance and rule of law and increasing need to safeguard it. Only through the continued recognition and defense of the rule of law will it continue to prevail and govern our society. We will explore these issues and develop a report and action plan to address the issues raised and actions needed to ensure that the rule of law continues to guide us. Now, this is exactly why I want to talk to you people, because they have an action plan and they basically spelled it out at the very end. But I want to tell you how it went. First, now I want to talk about the keynote speaker. Okay. I took copious notes. I didn't record anything, but I took lots of notes. I did it the old-fashioned way. All right, so let me tell you who this keynote speaker is. I was floored. Now, I don't know if you know, Connecticut is a blue state. So, but it's very liberal. So, okay, I don't believe in the duopoly party system because, but there are some liberal ideals that a lot of people here believe, and I'm an independent. So although I'm progressive, I'm also conservative in other factors. Now, I'm an environmentalist, so that makes me progressive, I suppose, but I'm conservative fiscally in the, national level. So like, you know, I'm an independent and I vote on issues and the people. So, you know, but they talk about judicial independence being non-biased. So let me read to you who they have there, the keynote speaker. Okay, Asha Rangappa. This is what she looks like. Okay. Now, she has like, I think she has an Indian American heritage. Her parents are from India. They were from a matched marriage, or arranged marriage. I read about, I think there's more about her on, Wikipedia. I read about her in other places too. But okay, so this is, she disgusted me actually. Okay, so she's a senior lecturer from Yale University's Jackson Institute for Global, what does it tell you? Global Affairs, and a former associate dean at Yale Law School. So global affairs, that makes me right away think of globalist, UN, you know, that kind of shit. All right. Prior to her current position, Asha served as a special agent in the New York division of the FBI. Do you know that most FBI agents were lawyers? Or many of them were? Or are? Specializing in counterintelligence investigations. Her work involved assessing threats to national security, conducting classified investigations on suspected foreign agents, and performing undercover work. While in the FBI, Asha gained experience in intelligence, tradecraft, electronic surveillance, interview and interrogation techniques, and firearms, and the use of deadly force. She has taught national security law and related courses at Yale University, Wesleyan University, and University of New Haven. Asha graduated cum laude at the Woodrow Wilson School of International and Public Affairs at Princeton and was awarded Fulbright Scholarship to study constitutional reform in Bogota, Colombia. She received a law degree from Yale Law School and served as a law clerk to the Honorable Juan Turella, the U.S. Court of Appeals for the First Circuit in San Juan, Puerto Rico. She is admitted to the State Bar of New York and in Connecticut. Many of the lawyers in Connecticut are both for New York and Connecticut, especially on the western end of the state, because it's a tri-state area. Asha has published op-eds for New York Times, Atlantic, and the Washington Post. Ooh! Among others, and has appeared on NPR, BBC, and several major television networks. She is an editor for Just Security and is currently a legal and national security analyst for CNN. So she's a shill, basically. And I'll tell you why. Okay, so these are my notes from, from what she spoke about. Okay, so when we went in, everybody took seats. And the crowd consisted of half students. Most of them looked like ninth graders. They were too small to be in high school, I thought. They were like 8th or 9th grade. Half of them they all sat in the center section. And all of the students got little care packages, little gift bags to take with them. I didn't get one. I registered. But I noticed it was only the students that got the little gift bags. And then there was scattered other people, but most of the people in the center section were students. Okay. So, so she got up to speak, and they did not have microphones to have open questions. They, just like you would see at other speakers would go to different places, they would have open microphones, and you could step up to the microphone with your question. No, what they did was they handed out index cards and pencils, little pencils, and said, you write your question and we'll collect your question. They did collect our questions, but then they said, oh, we're going to take them in the order that we receive them. But what they would do is they would sit on the short answers, or the short questions, or the easy questions, and they would just bullshit, and they would run out of time. And I saw the woman shuffling My difficult questions kept going to the bottom of the pile. My difficult question was the same one I asked twice. At the opening keynote speaker and again at the closing, and they keep piling it, shoving it to the back. And I'll read you my question later on. So, that they didn't want to answer, of course. So basically they were censoring and they were trying to control the questions in the crowd and what they wanted to say. So this is why I'm saying propaganda, and there's a lot more as I go. Okay, so she said the rule of law perception. She right away she jumped onto the Russians stole affected the 2016 presidential election and influenced. She said that they used social media, and the active measures equated to the KGB turning the table on the weak. That was never proven. In fact, I think the Russians only spent like $5,000, and Hillary spent billions and couldn't fill a broom closet at her rallies. I mean, I don't think people will listen to the Russians to decide who they're going to vote for. So anyway, she was a total shill, and they call it perception management. And that's what Obama made legal for propaganda, is perception management. Okay. She said it's not feasible to corrupt the judicial system, but you can change public trust and perception. So the judicial system is infallible. That's what she's saying. They're infallible, and that it can't be corrupted because they have judicial independence. They're not party affiliated. They're not influenced by money. We know that they are. I know in my case, there was a lot of influence, political influence, power, money. These things influence people. Threats. Okay, so people can accept a legal outcome even if it is unacceptable to them. They have to be able to accept the legal outcome. But what if it's unlawful? What if it's unlawful? What if it was legal but unlawful? Why would they have to accept it? Because it's under the color of law, right? So she calls generalized reciprocity is given the benefit of doubt. It's social trust. Okay, so basically they're feeling attacked because we had the first judge in Connecticut was canned in the history of the state this past spring. And they couldn't vote her out because all they do is reappoint. They're nominated in. They don't nominate them out. They don't have a mechanism to do that. So what they did was they rode out her term by not renominating her. But there was a lot of public pressure. She was a family court judge. I think she went 2 terms, and she was horrible. She was absolutely horrible. And she was mean and nasty to people. She screwed people's cases really, really bad. She made really, she was very vindictive. She was a horrible, horrible judge. She was not judicial whatsoever. And I watched her last spring, last winter, I went to the Judicial Committee in Hartford, and I watched her getting questioned for hours, and I saw her demeanor, and I saw right through her lies. I saw, the games that she was playing. She blamed being Jewish. She said somebody had called her, they were being anti-Semitic. That's what she was saying. They were being anti-Semitic, and all the disgruntled parents were anti-Semitic. I do believe somebody said she was a Zionist. I don't know that was a parent. I think that was another lawyer. Maybe it was another lawyer who had children in her court. I'm not sure. But the whole thing is she made it a political thing. It was because of her behavior on the stand, which is why people were upset. So anyway, she ended up working then. She ended up getting a job with another representative who is a lawyer in the Judicial Committee, and she's practicing law again. She's also related to, I think her son is an FBI agent, and I forgot what her husband does. Works in the courts, I think. I'm not sure. I don't remember the whole details about it. I didn't know her. I only met her on the Judicial Committee hearings, and I didn't like her because her attitude right there I didn't like. Well, anyway, so lots of young students, okay, future, okay, all right. So they were grooming these students. That's why they had this open to the public and students. Okay, so she said if self-corrected can be self-created reputations can be self-corrected with the public trust, that is. I don't know that that's true, but that's their goal. That is their goal, is to change the public perception. Okay. Do I actually study law? No, I don't know who you are either. This is a conference that I went to open to the public, so I could speak on this as much as I want. I don't know who you are really. If you think you're a lawyer, or if you're a lawyer, or you studied law, you think you know better than me and you didn't attend this, then fine. I don't care. I'm not answering your question though. If self-created, okay, public conference, okay, decline in civic and community. She said that there is a decline in civic and community organizations. That's like the 4-H club or different types of communities and organizations, but the American Bar Association is growing, she said, and they're filling the gap for different civic needs. So she said that that's the judiciary's job now, and the lawyers are going to step out and fill the need to teach civics to students, to introduce them to. Yeah, no, you are. If you watch this from the beginning, I'm going over a seminar that I went to, a conference. So basically, you don't have to ask my credentials on here. I'll take questions at the end. I'm talking about what my experience was. Okay. So she said that they're independent judiciary, they're not party affiliated, but then meanwhile, she turned around and she started talking about the long-term damage to the American psyche, and the administrations come and go. And then she was talking about the Trump administration, how he has a pattern of giving pardons that go against the rule of law. And she was bashing Trump, but she didn't say anything about Obama's pardons. I mean, they all pardoned. Even Clinton made pardons. I mean, but she was really bashing on Trump. Not to say that I'm pro-Trump, but I'm really glad he's pulling out of Syria, and that makes me happy. So, and he didn't sign the Paris Agreement, and he didn't go along with TPP, and all these other things that Hillary was going to do. So, okay, should not be political, should transcend, but yet she talked all about Russia affecting the vote. It's crazy. And she spoke it with authority. And that's the scary part, because half of these people here were 9th grade students. And she spoke with authority because she's related to the CNN and FBI. And so that was scary that she's talking to, and they're believing her, because after she was done speaking, they all wanted to take pictures with her like she was a rock star. And she was loving every minute of it. And I was like, gag, because I knew she was a shill. She was just lying through her teeth. I didn't like her. I would never invite her for dinner. Her attitude and just her presence. I just was like, that whole room, I could feel like I could cut the air because it was so thick of lies and deceit. I just didn't like it, you know. Do I not trust them? No, I don't. Because here they are, preaching how good they are, and I know the other side. I know what they've done, and I know what they do. I know what they've done to me. So, are there good judges? Sure. Are there some good lawyers? Sure. There wasn't any family court judges present at this conference, not one family court judge. on the panels. They were appellate, Supreme Court. There were a couple of lawyers, representatives, but nobody from family court or criminal court. I guess because they're too busy. And the appellate court, there was appellate court. And most of them for courts that were local to Hartford, because it's a half-a-day conference. I guess they don't want to pull them out for the whole day. But then they offered to do a lot more community things, just like they did for this conference. Oh, if you want us to come to your school, we'll come to your school. And look, we're here today. We could take off the time. We have the time to do it. Oh, they have the time to do it because they don't accept our cases for appeal. There's no redress. So, anyway. Okay, so let me see. So then it was a big powwow. Then we do the breakout sessions. All the students in their little goodie bags, because I didn't get one, but all the students did go to this student breakout session. I went to the politics and the rule of law, and then there was media and the rule of law. So those were the three: students and teachers, politics and media. I went to politics. And that was Honorable Ingrid Moley. She was appellate court justice. She was a moderator. She was very good. Judge Bright was the appellate chief elections officer. The Secretary of State, Dempsey Merrill, there were a few representatives, and one of them was a Republican. Matt Ritter was the House Majority Leader, and then Representative Tom O'Day Jr., he's the Republican, and then there's Representative Stephen Stratsom, he's an assistant majority leader and on the judicial. He's also on the judicial committee. And then there's Kelly Peck. She's a lawyer from probate law. Now, one of the things that happened in the middle of this, they were making a joke about it, but one of them pulls out a handbook of the Constitution and passed it to the other. I think it was Stephen Stastrom handed it over to Tom O'Day. And they were joking, oh, we always walk around with the Constitution. Meanwhile, I don't know, they're representatives. They're not judges. They're representatives, but they're walking around with the Constitution. Whatever. I just thought it was like a little bit over the top there, a little dramatic. But anyway, so Judge Bright, she was the appellate court chief elections officer. She's in charge of the electoral things in Connecticut. Okay, the elections. Okay, and she says governed by law, not by individuals. We know that the evidence is facts. And this is like in trial. But what if the evidence isn't considered or is false? That's what I wrote. So what if the evidence isn't considered or it's false? What if they don't let you in? What if the standards of evidence, like in family court, is lower than the standards of evidence in criminal court? And so hearsay is admissible. So how do you prove that when somebody's lying? Or the judge can choose not to look at evidence because there's no jury. That's true too. How many pro se cases have been overturned in favor of the pro se petitioner? I doubt that there's any. I don't think so. I mean, I know that in Tennessee there aren't any. So, all right. She said politics. Judge Bright said politics have changed since the early 90s. Equitable treatment means all votes are handled fairly. And then she talked about conspiracy theorists. About photo ID laws, lists, undocumented hanging chairs in 2000 and since 2008, challenging more elections, that voter fraud she talked about, but she didn't talk about election fraud. She did talk a little bit about, she talked a little bit about cybersecurity of elections, but she didn't talk about actually election. There's a difference between election fraud and voter fraud. Voter fraud is when the voters go and they might vote twice, or they have their absentee ballot and then whatever, or they're not documented and then they vote anyway. That's voter fraud. And election fraud is when they're doing all the other stuff in the background. Russians getting into voter files, and Connecticut was one of them. That's what she said. Ha! And I had to laugh at that. I wrote a ha and a laugh. because she said the Russians are getting into Connecticut's voter files. I thought that was a joke. I thought that was funny. I mean, what kind of proof do they have of something like that? They don't even have evidence of the Russians interfering in our social media. So, okay, and then there was Representative Matt Ritter. He didn't say too much. Okay, all right, and so then Representative Tom O'Day, Republican, Judicial Selection Committee. It's imperative not to attack. He said it's imperative not to attack the judges because they're concerned about voting on and approving the judges. So that's why the representatives were there. And there, again, I mentioned Judge Emmons, and it was a big deal for them. It took up a lot of their time having to deal with her. So there were some very strong people in the legislation that were for the parents and that knew what she was like. Representative Strassum, whatever, it's fair grounds to question the demeanor of a judge on the bench, especially on recommission. I liked him. I liked Representative Strassum. He's the one who actually, though, pulled out the book, the handbook of the Constitution, which I thought was a joke. But I actually liked Strassum. Blech, whatever. And they talked about gerrymandering, which is changing the district boundaries to favor a party, but whatever. Every council person in New Haven, I forgot how many, there's many, but every council person is a Democrat. There's not one Republican in the council for New Haven. Crazy. And my landlord has complained many times about the building next door, and I asked the councilman, she's like, oh, who's your landlord? Oh, she's voting for whoever. She outrightly told me that she wasn't going to take care of the building next to me because of my landlord owning several of the houses on the street here. So it's crazy. So Judge Bright, questioning the results of the judge's decision is the issue. Demeanor is fair game. Disgruntled is a dangerous bridge to cross. Well, they call parents who are angered about a judge's demeanor disgruntled. Judges are all appointed in Connecticut, as I said. And Justice Ritter had admitted that they had a rough year with the judiciary process. Appointing them because they had to unappoint a judge, and they've never had to do that before. Being a judge is Judge Bright says being a judge is a career. It's a very limited circumstances for legislature to make that debate relating to not voting out Emmons. Oh, very limited circumstances for all right. So there were very limited circumstances for the legislature to make a debate relating to not voting on Emmons. Like, they're supposed to vote her to recommission her, but they didn't have a vote to vote her out because they don't have that in their rules to vote somebody out. So what they did was they just let it ride, and then they talked about limiting time on their debating because they felt like it was a lot of wasted time. But when we were at the Judicial Committee, they only let the people from the public speak for 3 minutes apiece, which was ridiculous because there was a lot more to say. Look at me. I'm sitting here going over this thing, and I'm almost done. But 3 minutes? 3 minutes is crazy. The last session, the last session, after this whole public political session, which was okay. I mean, I could see it was all... Then we came back to a general session. For general questions, it was like roundtable questions. They had several people on. There was Justice Rubens, Justice Maria Khan, Chief Justice Rubens, Justice Maria Khan, Chief Justice Douglas Levine, and Justice Ingrid Mull. There were 4 judges. 2 of them were Chief Justices. Okay. So basically the UN, according to the UN, there are 4 principles to determine if any government is adhering to the rule of law. The 4 principles, listen to this, the 4 principles. Accountability is number 1. Just laws being applied evenly is number 2. Number 3 is open government. And number 4 is accessible and impartial dispute resolution. All right, so think about those. Accountability, open government. We don't even have open courts. We can't even videotape in courts. Laws are not just when they aren't applied evenly, because they keep themselves immune. And the accessibility. If you don't have a good lawyer, you don't have access to, you get appointed by a judge, a lawyer who's a player, who's playing with the other party, the petitioner. So all right, so then Justice McDonald did the closing, and Justice McDonald was another Trump basher, and he was very angry. I was shocked. I was like, what? Now, Justice, let me read about him. He is, oh, where is it? Okay, he doesn't have all the accolades and stuff that the keynote speaker has, but he spoke with anger and authority, because he was like pounding his fist, almost angry at being challenged, attacked. The judiciary is being attacked. Well, they are, because of their behavior. Okay. Born in Stanford, he went to UConn. He taught a little bit in University of New Haven, and I'm trying to give you what I remember. Oh, he has his doctorate degree. He went to Cornell University for his bachelor's, and UConn for his doctorate, juris doctorate. He went to the Western New England University School of Law, and basically he has a clean record. Director of Legal Affairs and Corporation Counsel. It's basically corporate law stuff. Senate. He served as a representative for a while between 2000, a state senator, I should say, between 2003 and 2011. So he went straight into the politics not long after his career kicked off. Like 10 years later, he started to serve as a Senate deputy majority leader of the Senate. Board of Finance. He's a business guy. He does his laws in business, so he's not involved with family law at all. But he was very angered, and he was also bashing the president. And one of the things he said was, nobody likes Judge Judy's insults and temperament. So, and that almost never happens in Connecticut. Well, I have to debate that, because I know about Judge Emmons. But meanwhile, he made the comparison to Judge Judy and Trump, in his tweets. And they were talking about his tweets. And I was like, why are they talking about the president? They're supposed to be talking about the judiciary. Why the president? And judicial independence is under attack. And he said that again and again. Judges must be insulated. Well, they already are. Well, this is big, 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 big. What he said was that the judges should go out in the public, that we are going to go out in the public. We are going to have to change the public opinions and public, their perceptions of us. And we're going to go and talk to the schools and the students. Basically, they want to groom, and they want to, all that civic study. They basically want to convince them that they're all following the letter of the law and the rule of law. But we know that they're doing color of law when it comes to family court and probate court, and and then what happens in the prisons, in the prison industry. You got your criminal court and prison industry. You got your probate court and your nursing homes, and you got your family court and your CPS. I handed in a question on index cards that they keep shoveling to the bottom, and this is what I said on the index card. Judge Robbins said we would rather release a guilty person than send an innocent to prison. That said, why does family court have a lower threshold of standard of rules evidence where hearsay is admissible, yet a parent can't get a jury when asked for, and are presumed guilty, needing to prove themselves innocent due to insufficient investigations? With Title IV incentives to remove a child from to remove children from the federal government have anything to do with the way that family court operates? And they wouldn't answer that question. They wouldn't touch it with a 10-foot pole. So basically, it's a big propaganda. They're panicking, though. So that's the good news. They know that we're angry. They feel the pulse that we're not happy. So we must be making some kind of an impact with the number of complaints against the judges, the number of calls to the legislators for the changes in legislation that we want to make to have rules like having cameras in the courtroom or different things like that. They're definitely very well aware of us. In fact, the whole way that I wasn't able to register, and then people weren't able to register. But when I went there, then they were, and I called up and I made an effort, then they were very kind. But the students all getting packets, but nobody else got packets. They're really trying to groom and grow up. And I can understand it from their perspective. But at the same time, they're also saying that they have judicial independence, meaning that they're free of influence of political parties. And they're free of, any kind of financial incentives or political incentives. But they're all related. They're all together. They're all working together. All right. Separation of powers. I don't know. All right. So anyway, I know it was really long, but I just said I'd give you all the information that I learned, and that's what I learned. And I tried to get the other seminars, but they didn't have them recorded, and I didn't record. So, all right. Have a good night. And this one's for the archives. Bye-bye. Maybe I'll share it tomorrow when I get out of jail. Good night. Oh, one final thought. If they think that we have to teach civics to the children, why don't we volunteer to teach children, like after school clubs or something? Something to think about. We could do something. I mean, do we have to be a lawyer? Do we have to be a teacher to teach basic civics? I don't know. It's just a thought. All right.